Through the Gates is produced under the support of the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management to enhance, promote, and defend the North American model of wildlife conservation and responsible wildlife management. That's our mission. We're engaged in fighting at every level so that wildlife management remains science-based and conservation continues to work for our wildlife. To learn more and join the movement, visit SaveTheHuntColorado.com. The North American model of wildlife conservation is the greatest conservation model in the world. It's a success story that should be shared and celebrated because everybody is a part of it. So we're here for another episode of Through the Gates to Save the Hunt, and we've got two special guests. We've got Dustin Lovell with Ullr Archery.
Yes, sir.
And then we've got Adam Welbon also, and you like wear many hats, don't you?
Yeah, I just show up random places and people have me do stuff. So
well, you've been doing a lot of stuff the last 15 months or so since we became friends.
Yep.
And so go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of give us a rundown of who, where, and then we'll jump into Adam.
Absolutely. So my name is Dustin Lovell. I'm the owner of Ullr's Archery. It's something I started a couple years ago. I've always been into archery. I love shooting, and it just was upset with the industry, and I wanted to change. So instead of going out there and trying to go through all the myriad of products, I said, well, hell, I'm just going to do it myself. I was blessed to obviously have a friend like Adam that was kind of the catalyst that pushed me over the edge of you've got to do this. So part of what we do is we do customized archery products for people that are hunting or target shooting throughout the U.S. I actually had my first international client, so that was always fun trying to figure out how I get arrows across the border. But we do customized arrows for those that are going into the field. A lot of people have the capability, but they don't have the time. I've got the time and I've got the capability, and we can give a really custom environment, custom engagement with our clients that's personal to them. And we take it personal because you're taking my work into the field. Mm-hmm. It's my hands that are building your arrows. It's my mind that's doing all the equations, and I'm putting it out there so that you have the best opportunity for the best shot.
How long have you been doing it?
I'm building arrows. I've been doing that for about 5 years now. I've been doing it for myself for a while, and then obviously the Ullrs, this will be our third year.
And you and I got together give it a little bit of background for that.
Yeah, so I actually got the pleasure to meet you for the first time at Mile High Hunt and Fish Festival last year, and just got to talk about what was going on in the community. It was a very thoughtful conversation, and then as we were talking, it sparked an idea of this is why I hunt and what hunting means to me. Mm-hmm. And you were the first person to step up and do your 30-second little blip on it.
Elevator speech.
But then I think we ended up like 60 people that gave us their what hunting means to me, whether they were just there to participate, they were hunters, they were athletes, equipment people. It was neat to see, but what we found is everyone had the same reasons. They did it because they enjoyed it. They did it because they felt a part of their community, a part of the world around them. It brought them closer to whatever their level of spirituality they associated themselves with. Mm-hmm. They found a way to teach those that are younger than us. It's a community. I mean, really everything we talk about as hunters, as conservationists, I wasn't necessarily surprised, but it was neat to see it because you realize that we're so much more alike than we are different.
You're from Colorado originally?
Born and raised. I was actually born in Longmont. I lived there for most of my life, and now we live up in Windsor.
And the main scope of your life for livelihood, paying the bills, is what?
I'm a chief revenue officer for a software company out of California.
Cool.
So I spend every day working bank compliance software.
Really? So exciting, huh?
Yes, super riveting stuff. So I get to hang out with bankers all day, so you can imagine how riveting those conversations are. But it's a good gig. I love it. I get to meet a lot of very interesting people in that role as well. But at heart, I'm a salesman, and that's what I've always been really good at. But I like working with my hands, and I can't necessarily be a salesperson and work with my hands in the same gig. So having Ullr's...
Have to travel much?
Quite a bit, yeah. I was a couple times a month going visiting clients, spending time with them, walking through different scenarios. A lot of it's just risk-based understanding. But again, kind of what I do in the Ullr's life, I put a product in the hands that makes people's lives easier, better, or achieves an optimal outcome.
When you first got involved with this effort of what we did last year and how it culminated with the election on November 5th, did you find, well, I guess I'll ask you, what did you find that was of particular interest that you thought that you needed to get engaged?
being from Colorado, there's so much that has changed in my lifetime here, and the ability to do what I enjoy is growing smaller and smaller. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. And we see the drive of competition. There's more hunters in Colorado. There's more people living in Colorado. And I think that stems to a lot of different subjects that wolves, mountain lions, how that population growth has changed things. You're seeing the landscape change. I mean, Boulder to Denver when I was a kid was fields. Mm-hmm. I mean, Boulder to Fort Collins was nothing. That was a long trip because there was just nothing there. And you're seeing how quickly the state's evolving. You're seeing the population change. You're seeing the politics, right, wrong, or otherwise, has changed drastically. And I also think there's a perception of people that enjoy the outdoors that are realizing that their opportunities to get into it are starting to dwindle. Mm-hmm. And the ability to truly get away from society, you have to work so much harder to do it now. You have to go that extra mile, literally and figuratively. And
which is getting more difficult to do if you live in Denver and drive up I-70.
Absolutely.
Just even try to get there.
Absolutely. When I had a ski pass for most of my life, and I finally gave it up because it wasn't worth the time for me to drive from where I lived at the time, Firestone, to go to Keystone. I spent almost 6 hours on the road, and I'd ski 4. Mm-hmm. I was like, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this? And I got the gift of having a friend like Adam that got me into hunting. That's now consumed my life, which...
Because you haven't done that forever.
No, I'm a relatively new hunter in the grand scheme of things. And I grew up around it. My family all hunted. It never clicked with me until I met Adam. And understanding my place in the world became so much more important because as I start to appreciate it and enjoy it, I now see where people like me that are native to Colorado can use my resources, what little I have, as hopefully a beacon of understanding. And again, I may not change people's minds, but I hope they feel more educated after having a conversation. And that's really, I think, what a lot of hunters are trying to do is bring people into the light. Again, you may not like what we do, but at least understand it.
Right. Adam Welbon.
Yes, sir.
Give us your spiel. Where are you from? Who are you? What'd you do?
I was born in Lakewood, Colorado, live in Kiowa, Colorado now. I own a flooring company, and that's really what I've always considered what helps me do what I really love, which is to, hunt, be in the outdoors, wildlife conservation. Just those are things that I'm really passionate about.
That's a generational flooring company.
Yeah,
correct?
Third generation. Yeah. My grandpa started in 1945. I never had plans of going in the business. My dad was diagnosed with colon cancer in 2010 and basically called me and said, "This is a family business and you're a part of the family and I need help." So 15 years later, I'm still there, and it's my grandpa and I were very similar, and he's the one that got me into hunting, and I don't know, I feel very close to him by continuing the business on. And being a part of it. So we're celebrating our 80th year this year. And so it's cool just to kind of carry on his legacy, kid from, he grew up in Missouri. His mom died of tuberculosis. But he didn't get past 6th grade, and, what he started is still going 80 years later. And I don't know, it
goes into a tradition and heritage conversation that we just had with one of our previous guests. And, a lot of what we strive for is it's who we are, not what we do. Mm-hmm. And I think that you're probably an example of that, because if you have the tenacity to stay in a family business in any length of time that survives for 3 generations, there's a formidable component of this is who I am and this is why I do it. And I think that plays into hunting. I think it plays into the conservation side and why we choose to do what we do. So you mentioned that Adam kind of got you into hunting. Yep. But you do all sorts of hunting. It's not just like you're archers. I mean, you have Ullr Archery, right, but you do a variety of different endeavors when it comes to hunting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've rifle hunted now with Adam. We've thankfully killed a couple of turkeys, and that's always the penultimate every year challenge of, are we going to actually get that done? But obviously being able to be in Colorado and hunt elk and hunt mule deer, elk unsuccessfully up to this point, but we'll work on that one. It's fun. It's just, you see so much more about your world than you could ever see through a TV or ever read in a book. And it's being able to experience that with someone that has that passion that is so much greater than a lot of people in the industry. Mm-hmm. It was enlightening. It was fun, but it also, heritage and tradition, right? That's now become part of our family tradition.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's now becoming part of our family heritage. I hope my son and my soon to be little girl being born here in August will be a part of that. So thank you. It'll be very, very interesting to see how that develops and get to be a dad that brings kids into that lifestyle and let them grow up and understand their place in the world so much earlier. And not that I didn't understand it as a kid, but it made so much more sense when I got to be part of that cycle. And that happened, I was 30 at the time. Mm-hmm. So it's a very different thing. And I hope more people get into it. And I hear this from a lot of hunters, a lot of different podcasters across the U.S. How do we get more people into it? And I think it's
just to let people know that even if you don't get into it, just support that other people do, because they're providing you with something that they don't have to provide for themselves. Exactly. And I mean that in the conservation and the sustainable wildlife management. Just because somebody doesn't want to do it, and I've taken people out and they're like, "Oh, that's cool," but then they go, "It's not really for me." Mm-hmm. But I don't want to stop you from doing it. Yeah. And I think that the acceptance rate of what we've got, which was proven this past election on a variety of different levels, the acceptance rate is just as important as the engagement rate. Just because when you get into these conversations about who's going to attempt to try to take what away from whomever,
right?
You got to have people there that are like, I don't do any of this, but I don't want them to take it away from you because I'm a friend of Adam, or I'm a friend of Dustin, or I'm a friend of Sarah. I don't want you to turn around, and Sarah and I didn't get into this, but you start talking about conversations like wild harvest, and you're talking about morel mushrooms and so forth. What would it mean to you, Sarah, if somebody said, "Oh, you can't go get mushrooms"?
Oh, I'd be devastated.
Yeah, and I think that that's the same way with some people with pinion nuts or shed antlers, or just to go get their own firewood, because we provide things off the landscape. Now, we do it more recreationally, avocationally from the hunting side of it, but there's a lot of us that are dependent on a food source to help stock the freezers. Maybe it doesn't feed us year-round, but those are the components that need to be expressed to the people that you're talking about,
right?
That they accept who we are for what we are, as long as it isn't objective. The objective is not to turn around and cancel it all out. And I think that we're in a point of education in today's environment that people, maybe they didn't really realize just how important it was until they were told or got the chance to be educated about it. And I'm just going to jump into 127 real quick, because there was a lot of people that said, why are we even getting a chance to vote on this?
Right.
Let the experts do it. If the experts said we should be managing wildlife like what we are, let's turn around and leave it up to the experts. I mean, I brought this for one of the other episodes that we did, but I mean, this is a regulation book for Colorado Parks and Wildlife.
Right.
If we don't rely on this, how the hell are we going to turn around and rely on somebody to check a box, yes or no, on a ballot initiative? This is far greater than being able to turn around and read that ballot initiative.
Right.
And it goes into the support that you get from the non-hunting target audience that goes on a variety of different things. Doesn't matter what it is. People have to know about it. So have you guys been friends for how long?
Almost 10 years.
Almost 10 years, yeah.
Yeah.
And how long you been hunting?
So about that same time frame. I'd right after I met Adam, it was one of those things I was always kind of curious. I didn't have a group of friends. I didn't have a core group of people I spent time around that were really into it. And being able to sit down, and obviously the best conversations happen over whiskey, as they do. I got to kind of talking about what he does, why he enjoys it, hearing some of his stories, and just being out in the wild. And obviously his background is incredible, and hopefully he gets into some of that, of places he's been, times he's spent in the wild by himself, and what it meant to him. And I realized I hadn't done that. I'd spent time by myself. I traveled, but never in that capacity. And being able to then have him take me into the woods and let me experience it organically. And
not leave you there?
No, yeah, he did put me through some trials.
I've left him there before. Yeah,
he's put me in some stuff that made my hair stand up, but it helped you feel more whole, right? And I felt, again, I'll talk about connection to the world around you, but it was neat to see. And there was never a pressure. There was never a judgment, which, again, if you spend any time with Adam, you'll see that very quickly. He's not one to judge you. He wants to understand you. But he listened. He kind of heard what I was saying, but also was like, go do it. You got this. And it's been a great experience ever since.
What'd you think when he wanted to go hunt the first time?
I was excited. I mean, most of my probably my most like fond hunting trips I've ever had have been 4 other people. And I don't even have a tag. And so anytime I get a chance to take a friend, family member, just took my 17-year-old nephew on his first deer hunt and was able to get him his first buck.
He was excited about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, I was excited. I mean, I get just as much out of it going without a tag than when I have a tag. So I was excited to take him. And, you know, I knew his personality and just the type of person he is, that he would go into it, you know, head first, but also be a good steward and a good example to non-hunters out there, and, you know, be a good ambassador for sportsmen.
So you had to go get your hunter education and everything.
Absolutely. Everything.
So how old were you?
I was like 30 at the time.
So how was that sitting in the class with a lot of younger people?
Other than the dads, I was the oldest hunter in the classroom by about 15 years, which is cool.
Yeah.
It was neat to see that, because then you see how many kids are really getting involved in it, and you see the parents getting involved in it, and just the community around it. But it was very unnerving.
Yeah.
But also cool at the same time.
You thought if you failed and that 7-year-old passed,
yeah, I wasn't exactly looking over and cheating off their paper, but it was cool.
Yeah.
But I don't know, there's just something about it, and I wish I could put it into words for people that have never done it, that would get them excited and want to go and spend time and doing it. We got to take my wife out for her first hunt. She was not a hunter; she was just hunting with us, and seeing her reaction, because she's an animal person her whole life, horses, farm animals. She raised goats, so very different lifestyle, where hunting was just not a part of that. And she mustered up the courage. She came out with us and went turkey hunting. But one of the things she stepped away from saying, she goes, I didn't realize how loud quiet actually was.
Yeah.
And I had to think about that, because we're so used to it now. It just, doesn't register.
There's noise everywhere.
And she was like, the woods are incredibly loud. I have never experienced that. I mean, we're on farmland, so it's not like we're away from society, but it was neat to see her engage in that manner, in that same way. Hearing Taylor's stories of her first hunts, it's been a really interesting journey these last 10 years. I'm eternally grateful for the opportunity for it.
And Taylor's badass.
Yeah, she's next level badass.
Yeah. I met you guys at the Mile High Expo last year.
Yeah, well, you met Taylor there. I first met you at Sheep Show the year before.
Yeah.
And I don't think you got to talk to Taylor at Sheep Show, but I think with everything going on, I went and cornered you at Sheep Show at one of the banquets. But yeah, you met her at Mile High.
That's right. And your guys' involvement combined, you saw the need to be able to step up because of the attack on Colorado, because of the attack on science-based wildlife management.
100%.
The attack on the North American model. That was a hard deal to turn around and try to deal with, to get people motivated, because a lot of the community that we saw, and this is going into future efforts, not just in Colorado, but nationwide, the defeatist mentality that we saw the first 5 or 6 or 7 months of the entire campaign was like, well, good luck. I killed my lion. I don't need to kill a lion, or I don't want to hunt a lion. Good luck with you guys. I mean, everybody just thought that it was a foregone conclusion that we were going to lose.
Yep.
Right.
And what I saw was people that came out of the woodwork at a variety of different levels, education backgrounds, age groups. Some were hunters, some were non-hunters, some were agricultural people, some were politicians, some were just general people that their dad or their mom hunted or whatever. And nothing could be more inspiring is to go to a banquet and literally have a half a dozen or 10 young women and men walk up because they heard you speak, and they got tears in their eyes because you were speaking to them, on behalf of them, for them, because their grandpa hunted lions, or their brother was a houndsman, and they hadn't had that ability or that persona of their own to be able to turn around and go out and do what they saw somebody was doing. And it gave them the empowerment to say, I can be part of this. I can be part of this movement that is trying to stop everything that I know, whether I deal with it or not, everything that I know. And getting to know you guys and seeing the value that you guys could bring to the table, I think it's monumental to just to say a variety of different groups, a variety of different people come together for the same common goal to stop something that is not right.
Right.
And the voters voted on that, and you're seeing these actions, and we just talked about this in a couple other the episodes that we've done. You see the things that are going on in Washington, in Oregon, in Arizona, in New Mexico, where the sportsmen and women are coming out in full force. And a lot of that is with the support of groups like CRWM or Conserve and Protect Arizona or Howl for Wildlife,
Right.
or the Wild Sheep Foundation, or maybe it's the Rocky Mountain Bighorn Society, or it might be the New Mexico Trappers Association. There's a hell of a lot of camaraderie, collaboration, and coalescing that's going on that didn't happen as easily in 2023 and before, but it started to happen late 23 into 24. And I think that guys like you and what you're doing and what you've been willing to do is a really good show that this is part of the playbook and part of the roadmap.
Well, I think the marginalization of hunters as a whole, I mean, you look at people in Colorado that enjoy the sport, that enjoy the conservationist ideal of why we hunt. They felt like their voices weren't heard, and that just immediately chalked them out of the voting pool. And which is sad, because when we start to realize how important that really was, I think it hit home with the wolf. Well, and then it really hit home with the power of engagement, social media, and messaging with Prop 127. Mm-hmm. And more people are seeing and understanding rather than emotionally reacting.
Right.
And I hope more hunters are seeing this. I hope more hunters are getting themselves engaged, but they live that lifestyle that I hunt because I do it for myself. I'm self-sustaining, therefore I don't want you to bother me. When in reality, there's some of the most powerful voices out there.
I've said that over and over and over, Dustin. I mean, a lot of the people that we interact with have pretty much said, hey, I just want to be left the hell alone. I want to do my own deal. Mm-hmm. And when they find out that there's an opportunity that they could be next on the list, you take all these other things away, and then the guy that just wants to be left alone is the only guy left.
Right.
They start to look at some of that stuff. And we saw it just the resurgence of that tactic into September and October of last year, that these guys start to realize that, hey, they could be next on the chopping block, no matter what species, no matter what method to take, no matter what state. And that's where, and I'm not looking for a legacy, but the things that our community came together for, that we've talked about many, many times, is the very reasons of why you took him hunting, and that why you really find out that this is badass, or that why your wife says she never could realize just how loud quiet was.
Right.
And those are the things that connect with people for a variety of different reasons.
And even watching, I go back to two different people after the Lionheart event that I talked to that are non-hunters, really would, outside of them just knowing me or knowing people that were there, would want nothing to do with hunting, but still came to that event. And just the look on their face and the things that they said of, I would have voted yes on this all day until I saw this film and I heard Dan speak and I realized what was at stake here. And it doesn't affect me, but I see how it'll negatively affect the wildlife in the state that I love. To me, that was the coolest part about it, because people that would normally vote a certain way and they have, certain ideals and a certain leaning, that would have just automatically checked that box. Yes, that not only said I'm going to vote no, but I'm also going to tell all my family members and my friends to vote no as well for it. I never expected that level of engagement from people that, thought that they cared less about it.
You start to hit a different nerve with people when they think that things are being taken away for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, right.
Sarah, would you mind popping up Lionheart, and it should be under Blood Origins, probably Lionheart documentary. And for those people that don't know, because it's still a component of our message and stuff, it's worth not that Lionheart. So look under Lionheart, Blood Origins. Yeah. So that's September 25th, 2024. This was done by Robbie Kroger with Blood Origins, and it's worth mentioning because, Adam, you had a significant role. You played a significant role into getting that here in Denver, Colorado at the Paramount Theater.
You can tell if they've eaten or not yet. It's a good way to check and make sure they're getting fed, is if they're looking around for something to eat, then I start to get concerned. I know, you're so handsome with your little blaze face. Huh. You know, I think that there is a misconception that they're just tools. Or, well, you just hunt them and then you leave them be for the rest of the year when the hunting season's over. And that's not logical. It doesn't make sense. Oh, we're all gonna come over now. But I mean, they're my buddies too. If I've got a bad day, they make me grin, and I just like, you know, I grew up around dogs, and I probably wouldn't lion hunt if I couldn't have them. I mean, you know, you hear people, they call them in, they spot and stalk, some guys walk down the tracks. I like the dog part of it. That salmon oil's in the closet. Thank you.
I won't kill a lion again. I personally will not kill one, and the only way I would ever want to kill one is if it was hurting a person or something, which is very rare.
You don't know anything about a lion until you follow one for a week, and that's a true statement. Most people don't have a clue, only what they see on TV or read.
I think for most houndsmen, it's the dogs that keep them going, and you know, I think that's the true love of the sport is the dogs. But we really like the lions and enjoy watching what they do. And
I wish people knew that it's not portrayed how you see it in the anti-hound hunting films. That it's not a extremely stressful event on the animal that's being pursued. Those dogs are in their absolute happiest place they could possibly be. You can't force them to do that. So my name is Becky Dwyer, and I live in northeastern Nevada. We're lion hunters.
The reason I bring that up is because every single thing that's said in there was just like what Devin Jaffe said on the falconry episode that we did. It's just like what Martin Lowney said with USDA Wildlife Services. It's just like what Lyle Seidner said on one of our episodes, and what Jan Domosky said on one of our episodes. It's a tradition and the heritage.
Right.
It's who I am and not necessarily what I do. And you guys both mentioned about these spiritual, thoughtful, passionate components of why you do what you do. And I think that these type of things are centric to what we need to be telling the general public. Just stop and think that if you have something like this and lion hunting was gone,
Right.
and Robbie Kroger didn't have the ability to be able to use this platform to talk about lion hunting itself, if they went after archery hunting, would you kick one out like this? You know, I mean,
I'd pour every dollar I had into it because there's a passion and a love for what we do that's very hard to explain to people. And when you have that time to build an arrow and you know what the ultimate outcome of that arrow is going to be, but it's your reputation riding on it, and it's something you're proud of, I'll fight tooth and nail.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at some of the stuff that's out there where they could potentially ban the type of equipment we use for archery hunting. Archery hunting's not easy. So for those that have never done it, I'd more or less go for hikes in the woods with my bow than I do.
I've heard that many times. Very, very often. It's always been. Yeah, I take my gun for a walk.
Yeah, it's my bow's gotten more hiking miles than I've had in my life. But it's just, and it's something that I enjoy. It's something I can go and do, and there's a stress release around it. I mean, I get to disconnect from the world for even just a moment, just to shoot, and having that engagement that keeps me whole, keeps me centered. A lot of people have their vices, they have the things that they enjoy, and archery just happens to be one of mine. Hunting is one of mine. Mm-hmm. And I just wish people could see that. And the people that aren't hunters, they only see the emotional reaction to it. And I think that's the saddest part.
Just listen to that gal, just right there. It's the same argument we have, because you're screwing with me. You're screwing with my life. You're screwing with my inner being. And I think that when you get a chance to tell people that this adversely affects you and benefits nobody except from an emotional capacity.
Right.
When you got involved with Robbie,
mm-hmm.
how did that whole scenario play out? I mean, just walking along and needed a bus ride or something? Or?
Well, like I said, I just show up random places and start doing stuff. No, I first watched Lionheart at Sheep Show, and went up to him afterwards and said, "Hey, I know what's coming down the pike here. If you ever want to show this in Denver and need help with it, let me know." And it was probably a month later he called me and said, "Well, we're going to do it at the Paramount Theater. Will you kind of run point on it?" So I helped with Blood Origin's team, just kind of coordinating everything for the event, and sponsors and people that donated stuff for the silent auction. And,
And there's people who came from all over the country. I mean, some houndsmen, some not houndsmen.
Yeah, and the support of, even meeting and having friends even from Utah that were houndsmen that came out that, this doesn't affect them right now, but they understood that if this passes in Colorado, what stops it from going to Utah after that? And even with Utah having very different regulations than Colorado does around lion hunting, it was still a threat to their livelihood as well.
If you want to support a company that supported the efforts to defeat Proposition 127, then you need to support Davis Tent. Davis Tent has provided quality canvas goods for outdoorsmen for the last 50-plus years. For more information, go to davistent.com. If you want to support another business that was instrumental in helping us defeat Proposition 127, check out Salida Gun Shop. Salida Gun Shop in Salida, Colorado provides quality products, expertise, and knowledge from individuals that actually do what they sell. Go to salidagunshop.com. Listen to the advice of Cameron Haynes and support companies that are supporting your cause and your efforts. Minturn Anglers is one of those companies. Minturn Anglers provides product and fishing excursions in Colorado and are second to none. For more information, go to minturnanglers.com.
The scary part about it, too, is with the people that are fighting this tooth and nail, how quickly they learn from a loss. And I'm learning that very quickly when you start looking at Washington, for example. How quickly they turned around the Colorado legislation that was shut down, reworded it, revamped it, regurgitated it, and now it's at a whole different audience.
Yeah.
They're taking their lessons learned. They're in it for the war, but not in it for the battle. And as hunters, we need to engage in that. We have to be ready for the war. And you talk about why we do this, and we don't make a ton of money as an archery company. I do it because I love it. Hopefully someday it makes me some money. I'd be all right. Maybe be able to go and get a hunt somewhere outside of Colorado. But it's engaging and understanding that even just a simple share, a simple repost, someone is getting that message that never saw it before. I think that's the power of social media today. Love it or hate it, it does give you that platform to really expand your audience. And obviously, God bless the work that you guys have done. And Blood Origins, how you guys were out there, but you're also seeing the people that are following and re-engaging.
Right.
And it just becomes a force multiplier for the message. And that is really what I want more people to get involved in. And again, you talked about, like, hey, just because you don't do it, support me because I like it, because it's important to me, because it's part of my heritage, it's part of my culture. That's the drive we want to get people to understand. I think we started to get a little momentum with that with 127. Like Adam said, the people that came to the event that had never ever been involved in anything to that.
I talked to a lot of people there that would walk up after I was on stage and just really passionately have a conversation about what I said after the movie played.
I've heard you speak a lot. That was your most impactful speech I've ever heard.
Thank you.
Just, not to toot your horn, but I think it was the perfect, most, call it God, call it what you want. It was completely orchestrated for you to give that speech at that event.
Even the peanut butter part?
Yeah, even the peanut butter part. Even the peanut butter part. Yeah.
And for anybody that knows, I got criticized by our campaign manager for that. I said it's kind of hard for a bearded old guy to get up there and profess to know anything, get a bunch of following. But it's easy if you're a good looking gal and you got a dog licking peanut butter out of your belly button. And so my campaign manager, he was like, "Oh God, please don't go viral.
Don't repeat that one."
It's like, but it is true because here you are trying to talk to people it was essentially clickbait that what we created, and from the community to be able to support us in the manner that they did. I mean, very seldom. I mean, I got a couple notes here about different names and stuff, but I don't write notes and I don't write speeches. I spew BS as much as what I possibly can because I know the subject matter. But I think that has really helped us with messages that resonate with a lot of the target audience because it wasn't prepared. It wasn't scripted. It wasn't something to where you get to know it so much. It's just like if somebody talks to you about flooring, you got a sales pitch about what you're going to do and how this is going to work and that. Same with you and your line of work and even on the archery side of things. But when you're doing something that affects other people, you have to figure out a way that what's going to connect with them. And I've heard more often than not about that people felt a deep desire to stand up and try to stop what they thought was wrong. I'm not saying evil, and I'm not saying, and there's a lot of misnomers out there and misinformation and lies and fallacies and falsehoods.
Sure.
But a lot of those people just stood up and said, look at all these people that came together. Look at all these businesses. I'm hearing about this all over the place. And it was funny because, and not to make this conversation about me, but when my son's good friend came out in late October, before the election, he came out from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And they came out for the wedding. They got married in the Sangres where I took him sheep hunting. Actually, he tagged along while I had a sheep tag. And a big strapping tall kid. And if he ever listens to this, he'll know exactly who I'm talking about. But he dressed up as Bigfoot at my son's wedding because of a joke that I got with my daughter-in-law. But he dressed up as Bigfoot at the wedding, but he heard all of this was going on, and he knew that Ethan's dad was this internet sensation all of a sudden. But what hit him was he ran into a guy on some sort of a job site there with this communication company that he works for in Louisiana, and the conversation came up about he was going out to Colorado and he was staying with this guy, and my name came up, but he didn't bring it up. The other guy brought it up, and Ethan looked at him. Both the boys' names are Ethan. He looks at him. He says, "You know of Dan Gates?" He said, "How the hell could you not know of Dan Gates?" He says, "Every time I turn around and turn the internet on or look at my Instagram, his face pops up on everything." He says, "You got to tell him when you get out there that everybody appreciates everything that he's doing." Well, it's not me, but when Ethan came out here to make the road trip and do it, he said everywhere he went, there was yard signs and billboards and advertisements and stuff on the radio and all the electronic and digital stuff. We connected and created a movement, but it was only possible because people were willing to spread it. It was only possible because other people were willing to listen. And it was only possible because people saw value in the tradition and the heritage side of things, along with the science-based wildlife management. And I think that guys like you and your companies and the interactions and those, I joked, I did a presentation maybe 15 years ago, and I talked about the spiderweb network, that you can't have a spider web unless there's a bunch of connecting dots, and you can't have a network unless there's a bunch of connecting dots. We did that on 127 nationwide. The North American model came out in full force with people that had heard about it but didn't know about it.
Right.
But they educated themselves about it, but then turned around and bought into it. And I think that Robbie Kroger was a fantastic addition to that whole deal. But look at the message that we created that now has resonated with all of these other states, with these organizations and these game agencies and the people that are trying to start and prop up some sort of a platform. And Howl for Wildlife, giving credit, they're trying to do a significant amount of that. But unless you have the boots on the ground, state organized effort, it doesn't have to be an organization. Unless you have that, it doesn't matter what happens from out of state or on the periphery. You have to have the state people to do it. And you guys were part of that equation to make the state people do it.
Well, and the thing that I felt was different with 127 than maybe 114 or different stuff before was it. And you were the one that I felt that started it, is I'm not a bow hunter. I'm not a rifle hunter. I'm not a trapper. I'm not a fisherman, whatever. I'm a sportsman.
Yeah.
And that means something when we realize that sportsmen and women, if we don't come at this as a unified front and stop, our our differences within, kind of that collective, nothing is going to get done.
No.
It had to be, there is one organization that we're all going to, that has a lobbyist, that has the ability to affect real change. And it doesn't matter what you do in the mountains. We're all sportsmen and women, and we come together, for that common goal. And I felt like 127 was the first time that really ever started to come together. And
if there is a legacy that's been built so far, that we can all turn around and throw our hat on that hook, because we recognize, first and foremost, we're a sportsman, we're a sportswoman. It doesn't matter what we pursue. It doesn't matter what we engage in. We all have to have a license. We all have to go through the hunter education class.
Yep.
The centric component is the attempt to try to harvest wild game and be part of a wild harvest initiative, as Shane Mahoney put it. Mm-hmm. And I'm a sportsman. And I think that message in itself has started to resonate. And it's probably not as prolific as what it was when we first started it, but it's still there, and other ones are looking on that playbook and roadmap as well. I mean, I'm happy where we ended up. I'm frustrated that we have to continually do it, but I'm excited for the future, because younger guys like you, and even younger than you guys, have the ability to be able to turn on and pick it up and carry the torch. And you saw through our travels the amount, and I've mentioned it over and over, the amount of young women and young men that came out in support that are still, they came out because they needed to and they wanted to, but now they're still engaging. They're still participatory. They're still part of the equation. And that's what it takes, is to make sure that you have something that's justifiably engaging in perpetuity.
Totally.
Well, they were empowered with the vision, right? And that's the one thing I think we did really well. Everyone that was involved in the fight for 127 was there was a vision behind it, and people started to grasp onto that. And you saw people coming out of the woodwork that wanted to support it, and to your point, may not have had a full understanding of what it was actually going to impact, but are starting to see that this is a history of legislative failures of the environment around us. Mm-hmm. How many people right now have gone back and looked at their vote on the wolves and said, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And you're hearing a lot of that. Mm-hmm. I mean, the proverbial wolves are at the door.
Yep.
These people now have wolves at their door, literally and figuratively, and it's impacting them. And you're seeing that sway the idea of, this is no longer an emotional engagement. I have to be proactive. I have to be educated, and I have to know how this is going to affect the world around me. And more people, I think, are really grasping that, especially the younger crowd. And again, you're seeing more and more young hunters come up. And the number of followers, and I track my followers. I only have 2,000, so it's not a huge deal. But you see the age group, because you can see those demographics of the people that follow you. And it's like 61% male, and the other's female. Mm-hmm. And of those age groups, it's 30 and under. Mm-hmm. But those are the people that are engaging with social media. They're seeing the messaging. And with these platforms, again, it can be used for good or evil, depending on how you want to do it. And it has been used for the opposite side.
Right.
I think the work that CRWM has done has resonated with them, because you come across as trusting, truthful, and educated. Versus,
well, I've BS'd everybody, didn't?
Well, and there's a level of that though, but you've made this your passion, you understand it, but you can articulate it. That's the other thing I think has been really important with these different legislative issues is, can you articulate what's actually happening? Mm-hmm. I mean, people read these little cheat sheet books you get with your voter card. They don't understand 90% of the language that's in it.
No.
And you have to go back and do the research. And half of them get so frustrated, they just check the box so they can just move on. We did a great job empowering people with knowledge. Now, again, how many did we sway? I have no idea. But I know that there were some reactions that it raised some eyebrows, and they started to think in a way that they started to understand what this is going to do to me, rather than, well, hey.
So you do internet sales through your business.
Yep.
Did you have people contact you at all over the course of the time in the last year prior to the election to comment or to make any sort of statement about 127 or about hunting or about your involvement?
I had a lot of very positive support of, hey, thank you for posting this. Post more of this. How do I follow this group? I got a lot of that. I got some negative ones as well. I got some really negative responses, and people that I'd grown up with from Longmont that were friends at one point in time. I still like them, still respect them. Don't like their decision or positioning on stuff, but we try to take that stance of, I'd love to have a conversation. And I had a couple of those conversations. They weren't necessarily fun because you could tell they just didn't want to hear it. But
see, that's part of the kicker,
right?
Is they didn't want to hear it.
They didn't want to hear it.
They don't know anything about it.
Right.
They have a perspective. They have an opinion, but they didn't want to hear it.
They were ready to live and die on their hill.
Yeah.
And they were going to stand on that hill regardless. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think there's a good portion. You will never sway that group.
You're right.
You and I had kind of talked about the impact of social influence of companies backing one proposition or another and how that impacts your business. Like as a small business for me, the people that don't like what we're doing for 127, don't like what we're doing for conservation, don't like the posts and the culture engaging hunting lifestyle, those aren't the people going to buy from me. So my decision to put our voice out there as a company, that's a no-brainer.
Right.
There's a lot of big companies out there that back off that positioning because it might affect their bottom line.
Significantly.
Like Dick's Sporting Goods, for example, they would never take a stance on anything like this, but their buyership is not hunters. It's athletics.
And it used to be hunters.
Used to be.
And then they got out of that, and I haven't been into a Dick's Sporting Goods and wherever. I'll never step up. If it was on fire, I wouldn't go in there to drag people out.
Well, and you talk about a stance. So they took a stance on the AR-15.
Yep.
And said, we're not going to sell them. And
then they got out of the guns.
Yep. And that completely ended that entire line of business for them and alienated the people that came to them for that business, so they went elsewhere. So there is a kind of a give and take, but I wish there was more companies that are hunting companies, that are sportsmen's companies that would stand up and make their voices known. That's a pretty powerful platform that they have, exponentially more than anything than you and I have combined, more than all the hunt companies in Colorado combined. They could put out a message that reaches millions, and that's powerful, but they won't do it because there's a bottom line impact, or there's a policy that states we don't take political stances one way or the other. And we see that's fairly common, but I just wish more people would do it.
It's just crazy to me that a wildlife issue could be a political stance.
And I think that's where a lot of the people that we dealt with came out on, and it's like, as I said, why did we get a chance to vote on this? And we shouldn't have, why is this even on the ballot?
Yeah.
And then for it to be so give and take back and forth to where over and over, and I know that Sarah's probably got to listen to this stuff ad nausea, but when you have people that create mistruths to try to sway people, and then you can prove that wrong. You don't have to counter it. Just prove it wrong by saying, don't listen to us and don't listen to them. Listen to the experts. Yep. Listen to these guys. These guys right here. All of this is what it is. Yep. The 72-page big game brochure booklet is more information than the entire Animal Rights Coalition can come together with each other. This in itself will outspeak, outlast, outfact anything that they bring to the table. The overall thing is, the fact is they don't like it.
Right.
This is the Bible, the regulatory Bible of the North American model of wildlife conservation and responsible wildlife management. Yep. It's the regulation book. Well, show me where the animal rights community has anything that compares to anything like this, and there's 50 of these in the country because there's one for each state.
Yep.
Well, it goes back to the old adage. They're scared of it and they don't like it because they don't understand it. And that's, I think, the biggest gap with a lot of wildlife legislation, wildlife movements is people don't understand it. And they're afraid to ask questions. And I think through your stance, through a lot of the different engagements you've done, you've opened up a conduit to have a real conversation. And it doesn't come across as overeducated or demeaning. It's direct. It's fact-driven. It gives people the ability to think through the conversation rather than react to it. And that's been the important, I think, transition these last couple of years of how people see people like the three of us in this room, four of us in this room, that there's so much more to it. And I think one of the more powerful things we ever talked about was we had a group of friends that don't hunt. They're never going to hunt. I could barely get them to go into the water for fear they might hurt a fish. But we had the discussion around dogs and hunting, hound hunting. And they were so appalled at the fact that you were going to send dogs out to get a cat, but didn't understand the value of that. And we started talking around the key points of why that's important. What does it do? The one thing that stuck out to them that they repeated, may not have changed their mind, but behavior modification of predators. Dogs do that. They change the behavior. The cats now associate a dog with something that's chasing them and dangerous, and they want nothing to do with it. Well, what's in neighborhoods? What does everyone in a neighborhood have? And it forces the cat's behavior to stay away from humans. There's not a single arrow flung. There's not a bullet fired. There's nothing that's happening in that scenario that's damaging the cat other than its ego and its now decision-making ability around where it wants to be and live its life. And that was a powerful statement. I didn't have to say anything about killing. I didn't have to say anything about harvesting. I didn't have to go into my spiel about why hunting is so important for the environment. It was just simply, you don't want cats in your backyard. These are the people that are putting their time and effort and energy into it, and this is the outcome. And they were blown away that was one of the biggest reasons behind it. And I asked them, how do you think they get that information on the cat? These people have lived in Colorado their whole life. And I said, have you ever seen a big cat?
No.
Not a single
So they must
person.
be extinct.
Yeah, they don't exist. They're the ghosts, the forest.
Or as my son said one time, we were dealing with the federal game warden. Ethan was 8 years old. We were on Fort Carson. And the game warden, Ethan said something about the fact that we saw a Bigfoot. And he says, you actually believe in Bigfoot? He said, yeah. He said, well, I don't believe you saw one. He said, do you believe in Jesus Christ? and the game warden's like, okay, so how was your...
Yeah.
I mean, there's some components of what you see is believing.
Right.
But when you got a managing agency there that is telling people that we had 200 in 1965, and now we've got 4,400 to 5,000 after 55 or 60 years of regulated hunting,
right,
and quotas and bag limits and harvest and data and statistics and studies, most people can't argue with that unless they want you to stop it.
Right.
But the middle of the road people don't understand. And if you could play this same playbook over and over, and instead of Lionheart, you could have one that's called Ram's Head or Ram's Horn. Same thing. We don't want you to turn around and harvest bighorn sheep.
Yep.
We talked about that with the Damascus and wild sheep and Rocky Mountain bighorn. We don't want you to do this. We don't want you to do that. And not to be just so centric on the 127 component, but talking about wildlife management and messaging, business in itself has a component of messaging.
100%.
You do it for your work and you do it for your business. You do it for your work and you do it for your business. You do it for play. Mm-hmm. Messaging, if it's done tastefully and done factually and has data and statistics to go along with it, is more likely to come out victorious. Just because people are not stupid.
No.
They might be ignorant in the sense to where they don't know, but they're not stupid. They all have the ability to open up that blue book or to turn around and do a little bit of research or listen to me and say, go to the experts, or listen to the opposition and say, don't listen to the experts. Because the opposition wanted to say, we're the experts. They don't know anything. They're saying that to this day. 2.5, 3 months after the election, they still come out, still trying to turn around and modify what they want and how they're going to accomplish it. And they chastise and belittle, admonish, and shame Colorado Parks and Wildlife and anybody that has anything to do with them because we're a bunch of bloodthirsty, trophy-hunting, knuckle-dragging Neanderthals. That's the way they interpret things. And I think that the general public, the majority of the general public, can read through the BS.
Absolutely.
They can read through the smoke and mirrors. They can read through the shell game that's been created because if you really want to get the facts, it's easy to find by you can Google it, but there's enough agencies that you can turn around and go to. Like I said, if you have a problem or a question about 961 species of wildlife and 78 game species, go to Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Yep. Why the hell would you go to some group that is trying to undermine and take away the ability to manage wildlife?
Yep.
Well, and that's what has been done so well is the resources to people. I don't think a lot of people realize that you could just go out and read.
No.
They had no idea this type of research was just open in public to be consumed and hopefully taken in and understood.
See if you can find this. Colorado's wildlife story.
But that was something that specifically, and I like bragging on you because I enjoy being around you, but that's something you did really well. You didn't make people feel stupid. And again, people aren't stupid. To your point, they might be ignorant, but they felt empowered to educate themselves. And that is one of the biggest, most powerful things we could have done as conservationists, hunters, sportsmen, and women throughout Colorado is just let people do it themselves.
Yeah, try that. Yeah, the one on the left, one on the next one. So if anybody has an interest, and the other states have this available, but I've got like 12 copies of this damn thing, which is ridiculous. But if you really want to know about Colorado's wildlife, This is the wildlife story, and look at what it is. It's put out by Pete Burrows and Judith Holmes, Colorado Division of Wildlife.
Yep.
And it covers the first 100 years or more of the Colorado wildlife story, and it goes from the inception. So when somebody says they don't know, well, yeah, they do. Well, they don't have. Yes, they do. They have it done. Oh, yes, they have.
Yeah.
The facts and the data and statistics are there. It's just that in today's environment, most people don't take the time to be able to do the research. I think, based upon the election, that people took the time to do some research.
100%.
Not just because of what was happening for advertising and messaging through the campaign, but because they started to question, we did all this crap 4 years ago on wolves. That didn't turn out so good. The wolves are in the news every single day, and it seems like there's lawsuits and there's all sorts of stuff.
And there's never a positive thing in the news about them. Not a single one.
No. And so I think people started to realize that maybe there's more to the equation about what was going on. And the other thing that I saw through this whole deal was people saying, why is it so easy for somebody to put something on the ballot that we all get a chance to vote on when none of us have any notion about it?
Right.
The questions that I had from some of the young women that I interviewed, and they said, I'm an aeronautical engineer. I can't even hardly say it. I'm a robotic surgeon, or I do robotic surgery specialties. And they're like, I don't want people voting on this stuff.
Yeah.
Why the hell would we turn around and vote on stuff that we don't know anything about?
Yeah.
And so I think the bigger story that we have to figure out a way to deal with, and you guys in the landscape, the business, can be able to be part of this conduit. The overall goal of hunting, is to kill something. Now, 9% of elk hunters are successful in doing that on a regular basis. That means 91% aren't. Yep. 19% of lion hunters are successful in doing that. It's roughly 29% on mule deer. It's about 50% on bighorn sheep.
Yep.
But when you have those sort of success rates, and I said this through many podcasts, you imagine going to the grocery store.
Oh my God.
And it could only be successful 9% of the time. You wouldn't keep going back to that aisle.
Yeah.
But we pay for the opportunity to be able to continue to do that, knowing full well that there's a 91% chance that we're not going to.
Right.
And so messaging about something that is eventually possibly going to die is hard when you talk about sustainable wildlife populations and what you're trying to get people to understand of why we do what we do, so we have wildlife in perpetuity.
Yep.
I don't know how you guys feel, but I see there's a glimmer of hope with a lot of people. We discussed this on other podcasts before about COVID, about people's ability to be able to provide for themselves, about self-engagement, self-reliance, about doing things on the landscape, trying to get outside and do things for themselves.
Right.
Do you see an improvement in the last year from the people that you deal with through your business and through your livelihood on things that have started to change for the better a little bit?
Absolutely. I mean, the number of new archers that I get questions and comments for constantly. How do I do this? How do I get into this? Can you give me some advice on that? And that's the beauty of the hunting community, is our community is open and willing enough to have a conversation. There's not a lot of other groups like that they welcome you with open arms. I think there's an engagement that's starting to grow of non-hunters that see this, but even down to the people that aren't hunters. I use my wife as an example of how she came to herself to justify me going and putting meat in our freezer. So she broke it out on what our cost was for beef to go and do that year round for me and her and our son versus what it would cost for me to go and have a deer or an elk in my freezer, and the cost benefit. She's a numbers person, an accountant. And it's unbelievable how much better it is for her. But her whole stance was then, I don't have to kill it. I don't want to be a part of that. I respect it and I enjoy it, but I know where my food came from. And I think you're starting to see more people go around that edge of the aisle around too of, I want to know what I'm consuming. I want to know where it came from. And again, with the election, you're seeing a lot of stuff that's being pulled off the shelves now because it's dangerous. Mm-hmm. And I that glimmer of hope, I think it goes beyond just hunting and conservation. I think it's just people's livelihoods as a whole. They want a better understanding of how they fit into the world around them and how they consume the world around them.
And I would just say that's how Taylor got into hunting, was just wanting to know where her meat came from. And she watched me do it and then realized, well, if he's doing it, I want to do it too. And I, from what you guys put her in position to, be a big voice on 127. And
reluctantly.
Yeah. She's, it's been awesome to watch her get other women into hunting, whether, and there was there's so many women that did such an incredible job throughout 127, being able to explain things that I think wouldn't have been as well received by the three of us sitting at this table. And to me, that's the exciting future of hunting and fishing in this state, is that there's no certain demographic anymore. It's anyone and everyone can realize the value of going out and harvesting their own meat.
I've seen a different level of people because of our outreach, because of who we hit. And I think that, with the many years that I've spent at different councils and boards and committees and being, the chair of different organizations, to watch how people look through rose-colored glasses, and then when they get into it, they realize, well, it's not as cracked up as what I thought it would be. But if you can just provide the salesmanship to support a cause, that's how businesses survive.
100%.
You have to have the salesmanship, and you have to have the buy-in from the customer base to turn around and say, these guys are badass. You need to buy this. Mm-hmm. And I don't care whether you talk about mattresses or trucks or archery equipment or rangefinders or dog food or whatever it is. We have to have the buy-in from our potential target audience. And I think that we started to get that here. You're starting to see it in these other states. You're starting to see it from a different messaging component of a lot of our bigger groups and entities that we associate with. And I really believe that if we can just sustain this message for a year or two and see it grow holistically around the country, I think you're going to see a big movement come 2 to 3 or 4 years where people really start to say, I want to support science-based wildlife management. I want to support the organizations and the entities and the businesses that support science-based wildlife management. I don't want to support the stuff that people keep telling me what's bad and what's wrong and what's evil and what's dirty, because you can only be told that for so long until you find out the truth. And then you turn around and go 180. Mm-hmm. You just you look in your rearview mirror and go, all that crap that I've been listening to is not factual. And some of that's age, and some of it's demographics, and some of it's just geographics. But we're seeing a change of philosophy on a lot of different levels. And I think the animal rights extremists are as Justin Nolan said before, that they ran into a buzzsaw when they ran into us in Colorado. But they're starting to see that a lot of these other buzzsaws are starting to emerge in other states. So.
They're winding up.
And a lot of that change, too, I think, oddly enough, is going to come from Gen Z.
Yeah.
I was just reading a case study on economics and, the different generations. And I think, whether it's politics or just... people getting more involved in wildlife conservation, I really think that Gen Z is going to be one of the biggest catalysts that we've had, in the last, 70, 80 years for this movement.
Well, you got ebbs and flows, peaks and valleys, societal changes. I never thought I'd see tie-dye shirts and bell-bottom jeans come back in, but they are in full force.
Yeah.
And I think that the different philosophies, some of that is historical and some of it's traditional. Some of it's just new to people that they learn, just like what you were talking about, 10 years ago, you didn't hunt. Mm-hmm. Well, for a 20-year-old girl that she just started hunting, she becomes an advocate. She becomes a bonus. And if you look at go to Instagram and look at the people that do what we're talking about without the grip and grin photos and all the other crap out there that gives negative feedback or connotations. It's kind of hard for the antis to turn around and really go after 30 or 40 or 50, 25, 30-year-old women that have 50 or 60 or 100,000 followers that don't all hunt.
Right.
That it's an empowerment. It's this creation that they've done for themselves. And some of it's societally driven. Others, it's just because people are like, hey, let people do what they want to do. And as long as it's not hurting me, just let them continue to do it. And I think that we saw some of that through 127 too.
100%.
Yeah, honestly.
100%.
So are you guys doing any shows this year? Sports shows, conventions?
We'll be attending quite a few. Again, we're a fairly small company. And again, I think it kind of harkens back to a conversation we were having around why we push so hard to support things like this. And someday we will be big enough to have the money to start donating to bigger causes. But now it's finding ways, how do I drive support? How do I drive messaging? How do I drive engagement? And as little as my platform is, obviously we've got stuff out there to help support you guys through apparel sales, through hat sales. And now it becomes an icon, becomes a symbol of the fight. And you're starting to see more and more of that logo.
That's no kidding.
In the public, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's funnier than hell because, and just because you guys are part of it and you're helping to promote it, I was standing at Wild Sheep and I was standing there talking to two guys right next to the Rocky Mountain Bighorn Sheep Society booth. And this guy comes walking up and he's got my face on a hoodie. And he goes, "Can I get your autograph?" And the guy that I was standing there talking to goes, "Oh, for crying out loud, I could get the hell out of here." It's empowering because it's something where people feel like that they're part of the equation.
Right.
And before I hand it back over to you, Dustin, the booth that we had for the Colorado Trappers and Predator Hunters Association at the Western Stock Show, the Western National Stock Show, we had big signs up on the booth that said, "Thank you for voting no on 127. Thank you for voting no on 308. And thank you for voting no on 309. And then we explained what each one of them was in about 7 words. Thousands of people came up and said, "Thank you for what you guys did. Thank you for saying thank you." And I think that the resurgence of complimentary, obligatory accolades is coming around, where you start to see people paying attention to what other people are doing and then recognizing and maybe thanking them for it, whether it's on Instagram or whether it's on television or whether it's on the radio or whether it's just at a booth at a sports show. And those are the type of things that I think, as Cameron Haynes said, if there's a company out there that's not supported this effort on 127, if they haven't engaged on it, if they've not said anything about it, maybe you need to look for another company. Absolutely. Because it's not about 127. It's about conservation. It's about hunting and fishing. It's about science-based wildlife management, the North American model. But if they didn't acknowledge it on this, which the way it was worded could be a detrimental component of getting rid of hunting and fishing practices in the United States, if they're not going to support those type of efforts, what are they supporting?
I mean, Prop 127 was the gateway drug for those types of anti-hunters. If that would have passed, 2 little changes to the language.
Yes.
Species and method of take. And you could essentially just go down the line and start picking off every level of hunting engagement in Colorado till there's nothing left.
Yep.
And where I think a lot of people start to realize, as you lose different levels of that engagement, the management goes to hell because there's no way to physically manage it. And I love the argument of, well, wolves were native to Colorado. Well, they were 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And the wolves you're bringing back now, these are not. And I use
saber-tooth tigers were too. I mean, like 5 million years ago, right? We can't bring them back.
Yeah.
I use the Jurassic Park analogy. It's like you're bringing them into an environment that they have no idea about it. They've never been there. They're trying to figure out how to survive. And they're going to take the least common denominator. They're going to go for the weakest, the sickest, the smallest. And what is that typically going to be? It's going to be livestock. And as a family that is a farm family, we've got cattle. I know how expensive it is to replace a lost calf or a lost lamb. And that was at one archery lost 17 or 18 cattle. I put a dollar value on that. $25,000, $30,000 worth of livestock.
Yeah.
He can't cut that check. He can't afford that loss. And that's what's insane to me is people are starting to see the impact is so much further than just hunting.
Well, and they're starting to see signage too that, just drive the Western Slope and there's signage out there that says, if you voted yes for wolves, you're not welcome here. Go back to the Front Range. It's that negative animosity that was intentionally driven by the opposition, hoping to turn around and drive us apart. But what it did is it created more of an urban-rural divide on top of what was already there to start with. And I think that you're never going to please everybody.
No.
If you could just get them to recognize the differences are legitimate differences, and we need to accept the differences. And if it's not going to affect me, and I live in downtown Boulder, which I don't, I want to emphasize that. I do not live in downtown Boulder. But if I live in downtown Boulder and it's not going to affect me, why the hell do I have the ability, or what do I want to have the ability to impact somebody in Huerfano County down in the south or Mesa County over in the west? Because if it comes up and those counties want to do something to affect me in Boulder,
they would be up
they would revolt.
Oh, Boulder would go absolutely nuclear.
Yeah, because even if it did pass, even if you could turn around and get that to pass, they would go absolutely bonkers. And I think that turnabout's fair play. I don't know what the heck you could do to them, but there's
Tell them they can't do the naked pumpkin run down Pearl Street.
Yeah, there you go. You know, or it was a Frozen Dead Guy Days or whatever the heck it is over in that whatever town. Is it by Morrison?
Netherlands.
Yeah, Netherlands. Yeah. And so when you are trying to move into the next stage of your life, how old are you?
Turned 40 this year.
So I got you beat by a long ways.
You're not old. You're just chronologically gifted.
I think it's more just wisdom. That's just what it is. You know, it's like, but if you want to do what you're doing recreationally, avocationally, 20 years from now, essentially my age, what do you think it's going to take?
Education and empowerment. You have to get the Gen Zs. You have to get that next generation involved and not blind them with bullshit. You have to arm them with facts. Again, they're going to make their own decisions. And I think you see that in a lot of kids transitioning into the college years. They go the opposite direction their parents were just to rebel, but then they come back around and that realization. I think you're starting to see that with the economy right now. People who are so far on the opposite end of the spectrum are realizing, well, my paycheck got a lot smaller. And these decisions, these votes actually have an impact. And that's that empowerment I think we need. And again, the beauty of social media is it's just a monster. When used appropriately, though, it can really... it sends the messaging to the right people. And when done correctly, that messaging is then retained. We try and do that with anything that we repost. We try not to be derogatory, try not to be hateful, but just educational, right? Now I might get fired up on a post here and there, but
I did yesterday.
By and large.
The guy pulled the post.
Yeah.
He's like, if I can, my wife says he actually pulled it. And I'm like, yeah. Well, it's because I laid the facts out.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't my facts.
Yeah.
But you put them out there, and he pulled the post to the point where it's like, okay, you know, fight fire with fire.
There's an element too. You know, you talk about educating, empowering. I think there's also an element. And my beef has always been the amount of people that I've heard that are in our community that, well, you know, Colorado's gone to hell. I'm moving to Wyoming.
Oh yeah.
Well, if we all do that, nothing is ever going to change. And so I've just always, even when stuff got brought up in my own family, you know, on my dad's side, we're 5th generation Coloradoans. Like, if we don't stay here and be a part of this fight, nothing changes. You know, we just get steamrolled. And so, you know, that's my deal. 20 years from now, I want people to stand here and protect the place that they love and the heritage that they love, and not just say, well, I'm going to go to another state, because you never know if it just gets steamrolled here, it's going to be in that other state eventually. Well,
and that's a perfect example too. I mean, Derek Wolfstead down there at the Capitol on Senate Bill 3, the firearms deal, you know, that they had contemplated moving, but he loves this state. Well, so do I. I mean, I wasn't born here. I moved here in 1975, so I mean, I've been here longer than a lot of people have been alive. But if you look at the changes of things, it's happening everywhere.
Absolutely.
It's just not. It's such an accelerated rate is what it is here. But it didn't used to be that way here either. So if you look at Wyoming, or you look at Idaho, or you look at any of these other states that I deal with, those guys on a regular basis from the political side. And 10 years ago, they said, well, we live in Idaho. We don't have to worry
it's not going to
about
touch us.
Yeah. And now they're like, holy crap.
It's
the
here.
People that moved here from California and Oregon and Washington, and they're coming in and they're trying to impose their beliefs that they wanted to get away from. That's what happened to Colorado.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a breaking point. There's a tipping point to the point where you're going to see some even balances. But your elections are going to be close.
Oh, absolutely.
Your elections are going to be close. They were close on the Wolf, 50.9 to 49.1, but they weren't as close on the Lion deal. They were damn sure weren't as close on Ordinance 309. I think it was 69 to 31, 41, 31. And 57 to 43 on Ordinance 308. Those are not close in election terms.
No, not even.
Those are landslides, all three of those.
Yep.
And so if we start getting into the deal where it's 50.5 to 49.5 and 51 to 49 or whatever, those are things that you could see that there's an even divide amongst the general public, the populace. But a lot of the states that you're seeing some of these other actions happen that are bad, like in Washington and Oregon, they might be 60 to 40 going against what sportsmen would want.
Right.
As opposed to going what sportsmen would want. And that's where I think that there's a glimmer of hope here. Colorado's not done, and we proved it this election with those 3 victories on those 3 ballot initiatives. If you guys have the opportunity, this is like a key question that I've been given.
Sure.
If you could have the opportunity to be king for a day, and you could make any decision when it came to messaging or about sportsmen and conservation, what would your message be?
I would write something in the Constitution for the state of Colorado that wildlife decisions can only be made by those that specialize in it, and it could never go to vote. If I could do that, and then obviously you're praying that the Wildlife Commission and CPW maintain the values of Colorado, but that would be the one thing, is just give it back to the people that are in the field. Give it back to the people that know what they're doing. Stop letting it be this emotional voting pillar for people to hang their hat on, that they voted this way or that way, and that's their whole political identity. Give it back to the people that do it. Give it back to the state. Let them handle it. If I could do that, I would be interested to see how quickly the ideas around conservation would change, how much more openly people would embrace the concept of it, and then try and engage themselves in it. I mean, I don't care if you go hunting or you shoot birds, go hike. You are as engaged as I am hiking, because you're in the same wilderness. You're experiencing hopefully the same things.
They're just walking their dog. You're walking your bow.
Yeah. Yeah. My bow doesn't eat.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit.
And the difference is it's funds from hunting and fishing licenses that are paying to maintain that trail for those people to go walk their dog. And
I think that was the other talking point that we found with a lot of people. They had no concept that the sales of ammunition and hunting licenses and equipment, all that tax money flows and benefits their day-to-day engagement.
Yeah.
They had no clue that that's what that money
They thought they did it through their taxes.
Exactly.
They just don't know the scale of things.
And that was really eye-opening, I think, for a lot of people. But that's the type of messaging you have to get out there, is this is the things that are impacting you day-to-day that you have no concept of. But here's an educational source to get up to speed. Make your decision.
If you were king for a day, get a moose license?
Moose and bighorn.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to, piggybacking off what Dustin said, let the experts be the experts. And I fear that, it's really easy to start putting people in place in power within the state that maybe aren't experts in that field, but they'll get a certain political agenda across. And I really, let Parks and Wildlife do the great job that they've done, and on not only lines but every single species, and make sure that the biologists are staying in the parts of Parks and Wildlife to where they're the ones that are making decisions, and it's not someone that maybe was appointed there that doesn't, that's not a biologist, but maybe can kick something down the road that's not going to be good for the North American model. I don't claim to be a wildlife expert, and so I don't want to be able to vote on any of this stuff. I want the experts to decide what's best.
Yeah, that's an interesting statement too, that I don't want to be able to vote, but the other side isn't willing to say that.
Yeah.
Nope.
No, at all. So, in closing up on this, we'd love to have you guys back again and maybe get you on at the Mile High Hunt and Fish Expo.
Oh, we'd love it.
We're going to be doing some podcasts down there. You want to plug anything? Want to plug the website? And
Yeah, so something that's really near and dear to me is obviously archery's been very important to my life. I've been able to share with my friends, my family, people around me. I've been able to engage with people all over the country and give them something that's unique and custom and tangible to them. If you're looking to get into the archery scene, we're always here as a resource. Give us a call. Go over to our website. If you need custom arrows done, let us know. I love seeing the photos of people out in the field coming home successful after a harvest. That is the most important thing to me, because it really shows that our product is having an impact. We obviously want to use our platform to raise funds for the various causes we support. Again, we talk about the engagement with Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management. We do work for war party movements, and just unfortunately, these fights aren't cheap, and not all of us have the ability to write a $10,000 check to push it forward. But if we can find a way to, through the masses, build funds to build that war chest, and this fight's far from over. So anything that we do and we can support, we'll always be here for that. And again, supporting you has been a lot of fun, engaging with you, and also we got to make a friend out of it. So it's been a really wild ride the last 3 years, but we're really enjoying it. So for those that need it, obviously head over to our site. Got a lot of really interesting stuff that we're releasing, but we want to put archery in the hands of people that doesn't break the bank either. Well, you guys have been nothing other than troopers to be able to follow in with everybody else and help this cause. And I got to say with you, I mean, no matter what I asked of and what we needed, you and your wife showed up wholeheartedly. I mean, I don't know if you were lonely or you just found us to be, sorry saps that you needed to turn around and help. But it's a very valuable relationship. The friendship has been great. Look forward to continuing it with both of you. Absolutely. And keep in mind too that if you have ideas that can be spread out and you see something that could be addressed. I just indoctrinated Adam to go down to the Capitol and testify down there for the first time, and it was like a Chinese fire drill. But it gives you an eye-opening experience, and those are the experiences you can turn around and give to your friends and to your family, because people need to know that all that stuff is available. But more importantly, that there's people out there that's willing to do it. And if people don't have the time, make the time. We all have the same amount of time in a day. We all have the same amount of time in a week and the same amount of time in a month and the same amount of time in a year.
Yep.
It's just what we decide to do with it. And as I often say, if we spent a little bit of time fighting the fight for as much time as we spend going out to do what we do, we would be the most undeniable force on the planet for sportsmen and women. So I appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you guys, and you guys make the drive. And make sure you check out Ullr Archery.
Yes, sir.
And we just appreciate your guys' support and helping us through the gates and to save the hunt.
Absolutely. We appreciate you having us.
Thanks guys. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Through the Gates. For more content like this, make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe on all of our channels.